I actually think the character Bruno starts to make total sense if you just start reading him in the voice of Ralph Wiggum from The Simpsons.
Right. Welcome in to all the members present and worldwide. I hereby call this meeting of the Piece of Shit Book Club to order. I am your dutiful chairperson, Rainier Weiss. And joining me for today's meeting are Jane Lynch. Hello, Jane.
Hello, Rainier.
Chip Wilson. Hello, Chip.
Morning, sir.
And our resident Nazi expert, Dr. Bo Dashington, PhD. Welcome in, Doctor.
Thanks. Just out of curiosity, who is out there from the board was inviting you, Mr. Rainier Weiss, to be the lead of our discussion on the Holocaust?
I don't want to name any names given the sensitivity of today's topic. In fact, for today's feature book, we are attempting something of a podcasting high wire act. We're attempting to create a light, breezy, mildly humorous episode about probably one of the worst events of the 20th century, the Holocaust. Specifically, we're looking at a piece of young adult literature about a little boy whose dad runs Auschwitz and who, spoiler alert, ends up getting accidentally gassed by the Nazis in said camp through a series of increasingly improbable events. Yes, that's right. It's the acclaimed novel by John Boyne, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And I'm a little bit uneasy about this episode today. I think the risk here is that we either end up being overly cautious about the subject matter and deliver a meeting for our members that is completely dry and dull, or one or more of us gets way too loose and we all end up unemployable after today. So,
are you worried you're going to say what you're thinking? Because I don't have that worry.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned. You kind of jumped the gun with the plot summary. I had a good bit. I was going to start talking about the book as if it was Life of Pi. But
do you want me to excise that and give you a different intro?
Over.
Okay.
No.
Well, I do want to make this very clear, though. I didn't select this book. I'm just hired to host these meetings, to chair these meetings. I don't produce the show, and I don't endorse the views of any of the other voices on the Piece of Shit Book Club podcast.
I like how you always put these disclaimers and then you tend to say the most problematic things over the course of the episode. So.
My hope is that with 4 different white guys on the mic, we all kind of just blend in together for the members listening at home. Mm-hmm. So
I'm going to be adamantly making sure that does not happen.
Well, look, before we get into this potential minefield this week, we first have, of course, the book report.
People ask me all the time, which business books am I reading? And the one I'm finishing that I've been working on for a long time is Keith Richards' autobiography.
The book report is our regular grab bag segment. News, views, happenings, feedback on all things books. Before I open it up to the book boys and the membership assembled here, I'd like to reach into the mailbag and share some email that we received at posbookclub@gmail.com.
Okay.
And please, active members, feel free to write us at that address. Again, posbookclub@gmail.com. You're highly encouraged to send in your thoughts to us. So this anonymous writer writes, am I the first person ever to send you an email? And the answer, of course, is no. They make some key points. Number 1, change your theme tune.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's absurd. I at the risk of alienating our membership, I mean, that's one of the stupidest things that I've heard since we started this project. And we've heard a lot of stupid things.
I won't stand for anyone besmirching the good work of George Lamb, Cantopop superstar.
That's the most outrageous thing Rainier Weiss has heard lately, and he's been reading a lot of pro-Nazi propaganda.
Okay, key point number 2, bring back Robert's Rules, which is perhaps the most sensible thing that I've heard since starting this podcast. And I'm going to insist, I am exercising executive privilege as the chairperson today. We're bringing back Robert's Rules for this meeting. So point of order number 3, give us more details on poopphoria. Regular listeners will know that poopphoria is the euphoria that you get from dropping a big deuce. It was something that we covered a few episodes ago. Don't really have more details, and I think maybe this writer is overcomplicating it. It's really just people who enjoy having a big poo. And then number 4, which is here. It gets a here from me. Try and get Jane to read a fucking book. And I don't know, Jane, I had shared this email with you before today's meeting. I definitely second this writer. Try and get Jane to read a fucking book. Like, let's all kind of try to pull our weight around here.
Just stay in your own lane there, anonymous listener. All right.
Okay. All right. You've heard it
stay in your own lane,
from Jane.
Anonymous listener whose name I think we all know.
I think we know who this is. Segment suggestion. Chip mentioned that he's been reading baby kids books. Let's give a shout out to the young parents that read hours and hours of boring ass kids books, often to the same one 10 to 15 times per week. How about a segment with a review of Chip's favorite shitty kids books? What say you, Chip?
It sounds fun. I've actually really enjoyed most of them. I wouldn't call them shitty. I feel like they're kind of, you repeat them so much that it becomes almost like a mantra. So I quite like most children's books. Actually, speaking of which, we're covering one today, I think, a really shitty children's book.
Something of a children's book, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great email. As we said, like really, really stupid key point number 1, but the rest of it was, I think, reasonable. I'm now going to open it up to the floor and invite the assembled executive membership to share any items that they may have for the book report.
I have a couple things. One I wanted to mention.
The
Coach.
chair recognizes Chip Wilson.
Coach from Survivor is producing a book of haikus, and he's allowing submissions right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case there's any big fans of Coach from Survivor who happen to be on the panel on the podcast and might want to submit a haiku. That's one.
I hate that.
This is different from Coach, the 90s sitcom star.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah. Coach, okay. What's his name? Wade something? I don't know.
Benjamin Wade.
Benjamin Wade. Yeah.
Coach.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. Another one, I picked up a little book myself, The Green Book by Gaddafi.
Oh, yeah. That's supposed to be a page turner.
Yeah. So I've been going through this. We got the solution to the problem of democracy, solution to the economic problem, and the social basis of third universal theory. So this is a sort of, what would you call it? Kind of a mix of post-colonial nationalist literature and trying to
Pan-Arabism.
Pan-Arabism, trying to do a third way during the Cold War between the socialist and capitalist nations.
There's a great part in that book. I don't know if you've gotten to it yet. I know we're throwing out a lot of spoilers today. I'm going to have to throw out one too. There's a part where he talks about his plan for women, and he mentions that you have to take women into account in planning, because of course, as we all know, women get pregnant and they carry a child for around 10 or 11 months. And it was
what he says?
It blew my mind, firstly because of just how wrong he could be, but also secondly that nobody corrected him.
Yeah. No editors were like, no.
I mean, are you going to raise your hand in that meeting?
That's true.
Point of order, Mr. Gaddafi.
No, there's a lot of good sections, though. You got the nation, women, minorities, then sport, horsemanship, and the stage. So there's all kinds of stuff covered here. So I'm looking forward to it.
I got to hand it to you, Chip. Usually you talk about enjoyable books that you've read in this segment, which goes against the whole idea of the book report. We're supposed to be sharing kind of shitty books on the Piece of Shit Book Club podcast. So kudos to you for sharing an actual shitty book when it's meant to be shared. Thank you for that.
Thank you for continuing to complain even when I don't do that.
No, I'm giving you accolades. Just accept it. Anything else that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, there's a book I've been reading that I quite like. What is it? There is no anti-memetics division. It's kind of fun. It was a gift from Jane's partner.
Oh, you started reading that. Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So I'm having fun going through that one.
What's Back the to gist you. There? I don't even understand the title. Those are words.
Oh, so yeah. Oh, so you're curious. It's like a sci-fi. There is a website that was kind of like a crowdsourced kind of wiki that people would write. Imagine like an Area 51 thing where you can submit like, oh, in this room, there's this kind of anomaly captured. And so it's clearly based off that. And it's sort of this story about some kind of alien thing that was captured that if you interact with it, you'll have no memory of it. If you try to write about it, it'll be gibberish, that sort of thing. I'm only part way through, but I noticed that right away because there's a site. I've looked at it before over the years, but I guess this is a novel that's kind of based off one of the stories from it.
Right on. Thank you for that, Chip. Jane, anything you're bringing to the table today?
Not this week. No.
Come on. All you have to do is just Google books on Google News and look for some sort of news item that maybe you want to share with us. Maybe an anecdote.
Nothing I can share.
All right.
Okay, I will share something. There was a little book that I found that I posted in the chat. Moon People by Dale M. Courtney. Each book is only like 70 or 80 pages or something like that, but it looks fantastically bad. Unfortunately, I could not start it, but I recommend people check it out.
Terrific. Dr. Dashington?
Oh, I've been checking out this book called The Boy at the Top of the Mountain by John Boyne. It's this book about this boy who just hangs out with Nazis all the time, but don't worry, the Nazis aren't that bad. So it's
maybe save that for the feature segment. Anything else you want to share with us? You're shaking your head. It's an audio medium. Okay. I got some things I want to share. So those of you who know me know I really love Kim Il-sung's biographies. And there's a new Kim Il-sung biography that came out a few weeks ago called Korean Messiah, Kim Il-sung and the Christian Roots of North Korea's Personality, called by this guy, Jonathan Chung. He's the Wall Street Journal, what do you call those fellas? Bureau chief for China. Those reporter guys for the lying media. And the last few Kim Il-sung biographies I read, you're like, it's starting to get a little bit repetitive. This is great because what it does is it sort of looks at how he built his personality cult from Presbyterian evangelicals and the idea that Pyongyang was called the Jerusalem of the East, and it was highly Christianized by these evangelicals that started showing up in about the 1870s in Korea. But the first 5 hours, because I'm listening to an audiobook, and it's a 24-hour audiobook, and the first 5.5 hours don't even mention the Kim family. It's all just about the growth of Christianity within Korea, which I found interesting. I mean, you go to Korea, there's 100 million churches everywhere. You're like, why are there so many fucking Christians here? And this gives you a good idea of how that happened. A fascinating book. Okay, some other new releases that we're keeping an eye on. View from the East Wing, a memoir by Dr. Jill Biden. This is a #1 bestseller in the Amazon Women in Politics category. I'm reading from the back cover. A novelist once wrote, "There are stories one must tell and years when one must tell them. Jill Biden's time to discuss her 4 years in the White House is now." Jill Biden became First Lady at a complicated moment in U.S. history at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic and in the shadows of the January 6th insurrection. These were the circumstances under which she set up office in the East Wing, where she hit the ground running. Available June 2nd, so you're going to have to wait, all you Biden heads out there. $29 in hardcover.
I think that should be renamed to the View from the Ballroom. Isn't the East Wing destroyed now? Isn't it gone?
Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine who is pining for this book. #1 bestseller in Women in Politics. I mean,
careful. I can see you lining up the jokes.
You know, we should cover is the Sarah Huckabee one when it comes out, because
yeah, we'll cover that.
That's been announced and it's coming out. I noticed like 2 or 3 weeks after the midterms. So I wonder if there's like 2 versions of that book that they're waiting to drop, depending on how things
Interesting.
go.
Yeah.
Another book that we're keeping an eye on, The After School Kindness Crew, Pooch on the Loose, by Goldie Hawn and a lady named Lynn Oliver. #1 new release in children's values books. And that refers to children having value, not value-priced children's books. Reading from the back cover, from beloved Academy Award-winning Hollywood star Goldie Hawn and New York Times bestselling author Lynn Oliver comes in an inspiring series about friendship, community, and the power of kindness, encouraging readers to take breaks and deep breaths as they read along. Quite honestly, I thought Goldie Hawn was dead. I didn't realize that she was still going.
Whoa.
I think I had her confused with Jane Fonda, perhaps.
Oh, or what was Lonnie Anderson? Is she still alive? That's who I was getting her confused with.
No, Lonnie Anderson sadly has passed away. Yeah. Pour one out for old Lonnie. But yeah, Goldie Hawn, alive and 80 years old. Looks fantastic for an octogenarian if you look at recent pictures of her.
We love Goldie here.
Can I just say for the purpose of the listeners, we are a group of like older white guys. We're not that old. We're not old enough to be. We don't have Lonnie Anderson posters on our wall.
Wow. I mean, speak for yourself.
The last book that we're keeping an eye on is How to Be a Christian in 7 Days. Asterix may take 50 years of sin and serious fuck-ups to get started by Russell Brand.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be charting on Amazon, which is probably something to celebrate. From the back cover, How to Be a Christian in 7 Days is the story of how Russell Brand found Christ, and you can too. With his customary, almost shocking frankness, Brand describes his apostasy from, quote, demonic Hollywood and radical conversion to Christianity against a backdrop of false allegations, his son's heart surgery, and truly jaw-dropping spiritual warfare. Coming out May 12th, 3075 on hardcover from Tucker Carlson Books, so you know it's a good book. Almost certain that we'll profile this on a future meeting, because I'm really excited about this release.
Yeah, I read his book Revolution, which is about, I don't even remember what it's about. It was so awful, about like how to spiritually, revolution for society. And it was the worst book I've ever read that wasn't for the Piece of Shit Book Club, easily. It was awful.
On Chip's suggestion, I've started reading My Bookie Wookie. I think it was his first release that came out about My Bookie Wook, excuse me, about 25 years ago. And it's not great, and it hasn't aged well either, because he's bragging about, well, we'll get into it, but he's had recently been awarded Shagger of the Year. The book opens with him checking into a sex addiction clinic, and well, we'll get into the rest of it when we cover How to Become a Christian in 7 Days. Okay, so concludes the book report segment. I now yield the floor to my colleague for our feature segment to take us through John Boyne's The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Chip Wilson, over to you.
I'm really excited to talk about this boy named Bruno.
Yeah.
As you covered briefly before, in a nutshell, the plot, you have the boy Bruno and his family that moved to take over Auschwitz. He kind of bums around there for the book and eventually gets accidentally gassed in the gas chambers. A little bit more extended discussion of the plot, I think we can do really quickly, and then kind of get into criticism or discussion of different components. But Bruno and his family take over Auschwitz. His father is like a high-ranking Nazi official. They move from their nice big house in Berlin to a slightly smaller house there. Bruno has a view of the yards of the concentration camps from his window, and he's looking out the window going, what the heck? What are all these people doing in these silly pajamas?
He's 9 years old, by the way.
He is. Yeah. Bruno is 9 years old, yes. He has an older sister who's 13 years old named Gretel. His mother's there with him as well, alongside a couple other people, like a maid they have, some servants. Over the course of the book, about halfway through, when he's out for a walk around the camps, he meets a young Jewish boy named Shmuel through the fence, and he ends up going and chatting with that boy once every couple of days, this sort of thing, over the course of his stay there. And that kind of goes for about a year or so. And then eventually, later on, he decides to dress up in concentration camp garb that Shmuel acquires for him. And he sneaks over to help Shmuel out with looking for his father who had disappeared. And the two are rounded up at the end of the book and put in a chamber and gassed. So that's more or less it. Most of the book is about Bruno adjusting to his new environment, living at Auschwitz. And then he meets Shmuel about halfway through. They talk about their different experiences in a pretty shallow way. There's a little bit of, tension within the family. But what really comes through in this book, and I can kind of move into this a little bit now, is that Bruno is incredibly ignorant of what's going on around him, beyond what you would ever expect for a 9-year-old, especially a 9-year-old that is the son of a high-ranking
SS officer.
Yes. He is so, like, it's not just that he's a 9-year-old. The author has talked about this before, when questioned about it. He's been pretty adamant that, like, no, this is about the innocence of a child, and we only know what's going on with the benefit of the hindsight of history. So he was pretty confident that he was portraying like an average boy. But Bruno, he's almost like Sacha Baron Cohen's Bruno, in terms of how like ignorant he is as to what's going on around him. The story is told from Bruno's perspective. He meets Hitler himself, and he refers to him as the Fury rather than the Führer. He doesn't know the name of Auschwitz. He calls it Out With the whole time. At one point, when he's doing his Hail Hitler salute, he says, "Hail Hitler," which he presumed was another way of just saying, well, goodbye for now. Have a pleasant afternoon. Bruno doesn't know what Jews are.
Never heard of a Jewish person.
He's never heard of a Jew. He doesn't know what Poland is. At various points in the book, when there are slurs used by different characters against Jews, those are always kind of, it's written this way where they said something and Bruno didn't understand what it meant, even though he'd heard it before. So he doesn't recognize slurs used against Jews.
Maybe the author just thought that the public education system in Nazi Germany was just terrible and just wanted to have that as a backdrop.
I think it's the case that this guy didn't do like an ounce of research, because any boy at that age would have been exposed. Like, propaganda and the Nazi ideology was deeply ingrained in the public education system from like kindergarten. Any kid growing up would have been exposed to all kinds of cartoons, like fables that were repurposed to tell like anti-Semitic narratives, this kind of thing, or praise Hitler. So the idea that this boy like doesn't even know who Hitler is
absurd.
Isn't it like, wasn't there like recruitment for the Nazi youth? I imagine that was probably a pretty big public campaign.
He would have been in some kind of like pre-Nazi,
a bit too young for Nazi youth, but still.
Yeah, but you'd want to promote it as they age, right? You wouldn't want to just like you wouldn't want to say at some point when they're like 16 years old, be like, oh, by the way, we all hate Nazis or we all hate Jews, and you should join Hitler's youth. Like, you probably want to build up a little bit.
Careful, slips the tongue like that. You're going the same way as Bruno, buddies. Yeah, it's also like when you mentioned that like the author didn't do an ounce of research. I mean, I think that's also just demonstrated by the confusion of the words. Like Führer to Fury is like, that only works in English. That doesn't work in German, because the German word for fury is not fury. And out with in German would be aus mit, which doesn't actually sound that much like Auschwitz. Like maybe a 4-year-old might say it the same way a 4-year-old might say Paschetti instead of spaghetti, but not a 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm. It's also not plausible because he's written as a fairly precocious, curious, intelligent, emotionally mature character. He's not some ignoramus who has no interest in the world around him. He's constantly seeking out new experiences. He likes exploring as sort of one of his favorite hobbies. So the idea that he has no knowledge of all the things you listed is it's completely improbable.
On that specifically, there's a point where he's talking to the boy Shmuel, and he doesn't know what Poland is, and he's like trying to understand where it is, this sort of thing. Shmuel says, Denmark is quite far away from both Poland and Germany. And then Bruno frowned. He'd heard of all these places, but he'd always found it hard to get them straight in his head. Well, yes, he said, but it's all relative, isn't it? Distance, I mean. I'm like, what kind of 9-year-old talks like that?
Right.
Well, it's all relative.
When they talk about the bit about, you might have already mentioned this, Chip, but the kid, Bruno, doesn't know what his father does, right? He doesn't know his father's job. His father is a commandant in the SS and marches around in uniform and has lots of soldiers that always listen to him, but somehow the kid just doesn't know. But at the same time, he lists, like, he knows what his other friends' dads do. Like, that's dad is a waiter because you see him working in a restaurant, and that friend's dad is a greengrocer. And it's like, this kid knows what a greengrocer is, but he doesn't know what an army man is. It's like he's got this insane mental block, but only for things specifically related to the Holocaust. For everything else, he's fine. but he just has to stay completely ignorant about the Holocaust, or the plot of the book doesn't work.
It's so strange. And like you said, also with the language, like the fact that he wouldn't understand what the word Führer is otherwise, which I think it's just a standard word meaning like leader, right? Yeah. So it's more like if you somehow, rather than a boy and his family moving from Berlin to Auschwitz to run the place, it's more like a boy was moved from, I don't know, England.
Did you listen to the book on tape?
No.
The audiobook? So I consume this in audiobook form, and it's read by this guy with this super posh English accent.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so it's really funny because as you said, he talks like, who talks like Bruno? What kid talks like Bruno does? He talks like sort of a really sort of, he has this affectation. He uses all of this sort of elevated vocabulary. And then listening to the audiobook, it's coming from this like super posh English narrator. And you're just like, oh yeah, this guy is like, it kind of makes sense. He's coming from the moon.
This might be jumping ahead a bit, but I actually think the character Bruno starts to make total sense if you just start reading him in the voice of Ralph Wiggum from The Simpsons.
Right.
Like there's a section where he's going back and forth with Shmuel. Like Shmuel is the kid living in the concentration camp, and he's talking to him, and he just can't. And Shmuel is basically describing how he was, rounded up by the SS and thrown in the camp. Bruno just doesn't get it. Like he just can't connect. And it's like Shmuel is speaking like, the train was horrible. There was too many of us. There was no air to breathe. That's because you were too crowded. You should have taken a less crowded train. We weren't allowed to. There were no doors. The doors are at the end, just past the buffet. It was so cold and they made us walk. Why didn't you order a car? It's like, and when we arrived, my mother was taken away and I never saw her again. It's like, my cat's breath smells like cat food. It's like, that's the only way the character almost seems like it makes sense.
That would have made Chief Wiggum head of the SS too, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
it all makes sense now.
Yeah, but it's like you said, you messaged when we were reading it, Rainier, that it's like one of the most irritating books we've read.
It's not the worst book that we've read, but yeah, it's the most irritating and obnoxious book that we've read for sure.
Yeah, it's so strange. And then not only are there all these things that he's very ignorant about, the other characters in the book like keep correcting him too on like for example, Auschwitz, calling it Outwith. Like his older sister's like, stop calling it that. So he doesn't learn anything through the book really either. Like he continues to remain ignorant about what's going on at the camps, any kind of abuse or anything, even to the point where at one point early on, they have like a servant from the camp that's coming in and cooking for them, this older man who used to be a doctor. And at one point, he helps out Bruno with a small injury he has. And then this guy is deteriorating as he's serving the family dinner and things like this over the course of the book. This older guy spills some wine on an officer that's having dinner with them at their house one time, and the officer proceeds to, it's implied, beat him to death in front of Bruno. This happens, right? Bruno witnesses this and is like, oh, it's quite terrible. Later on, that same officer, Bruno's friend Shmuel, gets in trouble in front of that officer and shows up later all bruised and beaten. And then when Bruno sees this, he's like, what happened? Did you fall off your bike? And it's like, how could this boy, how could he not put two and two together? When he's interacting with his friend over the course of the book, Shmuel, he like doesn't understand why his friend's hands are so skinny, or why he continues to be, skinnier and skinnier, this kind of thing. And it's like, what kind of child wouldn't understand starvation?
Yeah.
He's jealous of Shmuel because, the reason that he seeks out Shmuel, or he finds him, is because he's apparently the only boy amongst the Nazi leadership running Auschwitz that's living in the area. So he has no friends. And so he seeks out Shmuel, finds him, and he's like, you're so lucky. You got all your buddies over there. And you guys all are hanging out with each other. And when
you're all concentrated in the same place.
when he swaps out his clothes and sneaks into the camp to help Shmuel find his father, he's like, I thought there would be cafes and I thought there'd be people sitting on rocking chairs on front porches and hanging out. And it's like,
Yeah.
and it's, I mean, we've sort of danced around it, but it's one of the reasons the book has gotten so much criticism, because it really whitewashes the participation or the knowledge of German civilians in the Holocaust, and suggests that, well, it was kind of a top-down thing that was imposed on the population by Nazi leadership, and people really didn't have any kind of knowledge of it. People weren't advocating for it. People weren't sympathetic to the radical racial views that were part of this campaign of extermination.
I was going to mention the movie, but because Rainer, you touched on something that made me think of that. The movie, I don't know if you fellas watched it. I watched it last night. It's pretty bland. It's not much to mention about it. But the filmmakers realized this point and how dumb it was, that the kid has no idea what's going on around it. So they actually add a kind of an intelligent and historically accurate plot point, which was that there actually was this documentary, like a propaganda Nazi film called The Fuhrer Gives the Jews a City. And it's about this camp, the Theresienstadt, where they actually put a film crew in and then filmed all the people locked in the camp dancing and singing and eating loaves of bread. And there's a cafe and stuff like that. So then when Bruno says, he actually goes in the camp, he's like, why isn't it like in the propaganda film we were shown? Which is almost a smart thing to do. And the other thing, the smart thing the movie does is it's not set in Auschwitz, but instead at this tiny little concentration camp that only has 2 buildings. So you can almost believe that maybe it's just a fence around it. It's not a gigantic death factory. So you could almost think that it makes a little bit more sense, instead of like the insanity of the book that this kid is wandering up to the gates of Auschwitz and then, like, no one notices. And he's like, what's going on here? I guess there's a cafe in there, you know.
Well, also because the real Auschwitz had hundreds of Nazi families living there. They tried to marketed it to Nazis as kind of an Eastern outpost for colonization. So they were encouraging Nazi families to move there and colonize this area of Poland. So the idea that he would have been the only boy amongst the leadership in Auschwitz, it's not factually correct. It's not historically accurate.
I also think it's like factually incorrect. Just the fence. The fence is just this like tiny fence that they easily lift up, and Bruno can just climb under it. And I was like, I think things might have been a little bit more fortified and maybe electrified at the real Auschwitz. But that kind of speaks to, I imagine, like when you're trying to translate this into a movie, you'd actually have to think some of these things through, and you'd be like, wait, this doesn't make any fucking sense. And that really just what stood out when you're reading it. You're like, why would a character act this way? Why would a character not know this? Like I said, it's like to a cartoonish degree. And I think, if you read interviews with the author, he always says that he wrote it as a fable. Yes. And there's an issue with that, I think, that you can't really write a fable that's like so grounded in reality. Like if you want to write a fable about the Holocaust where it's, I don't know, there's some different kinds of birds. The robins are having issues and the crows are talking to the robins. Who knows, whatever, right? But you can't have just Hitler literally appear in that kind of story and and one of the birds not know, like, who's this guy?
Well, people know who the commander of Auschwitz was, Rudolf Höss. He's a well-documented figure in history. He had a family. Now, I would imagine that the author had drawn his inspiration for this book from the real events, because the man who ran Auschwitz had a family that lived basically right up against the wall of Auschwitz near the gate. So there are a number of similarities there, but only in very broad strokes. When you look at any of the details, it all breaks down. I mean, the boy in the striped pajamas just gets just about everything it could wrong.
Yeah. So I think it really fails structurally on that point of not fully being some kind of fable. Like if you were just critiquing it as a work. And the other thing is that he always talks about how it's a story about friendship above all else. But the friendship is so shallow between the two boys. They hardly talk about anything that's really bothering them. Bruno barely listens to Shmuel, like right up until the end when they're, gassed together. So That's really odd, and I think that also stems from the same kind of basically issue where he couldn't decide what kind of book he wanted to write.
You brought up earlier that, 'cause just to this point, that Shmuel was beaten by the guard, and then he asked him, "Oh, did you fall off a bike?" So when he said like this kind of friendship, what did Shmuel say? Did he just say, "No, I got beat the shit out of by that guy"?
He says nothing. He said because
He literally says
nothing.
I believe.
He says I don't want to talk about it because the book, the entire book is structured on Bruno not finding out what's going on, because otherwise he wouldn't go blindly charging into the gas chamber at the end. Like, I think, like Rainier mentioned before, he was discussing the inspiration of the author and Rudolf Huss and all that type of stuff. I don't think he had any of that. He thought of an ending, and then everything else is constructed in order to ensure that the characters get to that end. That includes total ignorance on every subject, which is why this book is like, it suffers from that like sitcom trope where everything would be solved if any of the main characters just had one single conversation about what was going on around them, which they just don't do. Like, why doesn't Shmuel ever just say, "Oh, they kicked the shit out of me and I'm starving and I'm hungry"? Or we talked earlier about how the kid keeps saying fury instead of Führer, but people don't, they tell him he's wrong, but they don't actually correct him. Like, there's a part where his father is correcting him, and he says the fury. The father says that wrong. Bruno says, "Who's the fury?" The father says, "You're pronouncing it wrong." And Bruno keeps trying, the fury. And the father's like, "No, it's not that. It's, oh, well, never mind." And it's like, no, not never mind. Just fucking tell him. Yeah. Just tell him and end this stupid thing that keeps going on. But the characters do not have those conversations, because otherwise, if they did, the kid wouldn't go charging into the gas chamber at the end. And then the ending that the authors clearly dreamed up just doesn't work.
You said sitcom, but it's actually almost kind of like a cheap horror movie where they're trying to set up a death, and they have a certain set
it's
piece
the ultimate
in mind.
Don't go down there kind of audience screaming at the screen. It's like, don't go into the camp, Bruno. Nothing good's going to come out of that.
I thought you meant like, don't go there. Like,
well, that too.
Yeah, and so it ends up working strangely as a fable, because the lesson is almost more like, it's almost more like a lesson that if you're running a concentration camp, like, don't let your boy sneak in.
That's the moral.
Don't have dumbass kids.
It's kind of accidentally.
I mean, it's not a bad lesson to learn.
And what's funny about it is like where the book almost works, and I'm 100% sure this is completely unintentional, is that it is the boy is in complete denial. Like, the entire book is in denial about how knowledgeable all individuals were about what was going on.
Totally sanitizes it.
Yeah, so it almost ends up being unintentionally this expression of like Holocaust denialism or complicity from individuals in whatever the government's doing, that sort of thing.
You had mentioned before, Jane, this zone of interest book/film.
Yeah, I watched the film on a flight when it soon after it came out. Yeah, it's more historically accurate, I would assume, because I haven't read the book, but
yes.
But yeah, it's pretty much just about the similar kind of thing where it's a family living right next to Auschwitz and in the what was historically called the zone of interest of the kind of area where all the families lived together, kind of in a little community. It's really interesting because it's just their lives, and then it's one of those things where you really have to like watch the background the whole time, where like what's actually happening in the scene is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, so it's never shown. There's no brutality shown. They never show the inside of the camp. How they communicate the horrors that are going on just adjacent to this kind of bucolic country house where the family lives is through the sound of the movie. So the whole movie is just kind of these, like, it's almost sort of a cinema verite. You have these long shots of just kind of domestic banality. They're hanging out in the garden, they're in the kitchen having a bite to eat. But throughout the entire movie, you can hear trains coming in and out, shots going off. It's kind of industrial clanking, screams.
You can hear the smokestacks in the back.
Yeah. All of this like soundtrack of horror that's just constant throughout the entire movie. That's kind of just at a low kind of throbbing hum underneath all of these scenes of domesticity. So it's really haunting and very effective.
And it's not just any family, right? It's Rudolf Hess, the commandant of Auschwitz. and the inspiration for the characters in this book. And it's such I'm really glad you mentioned it, Jen, because it's such an interesting comparison between the two, where, yeah, as you said, you don't see the Holocaust, but it's there, whether it's the character being forced to do the gardening while wearing the uniform, abusing the staff. You realize how undeniable the Holocaust is, and how anyone saying they didn't know what was going on, what preposterous, horrible lies those were. But it's the opposite of this book in terms of how it handles those subjects with nuance. It's at the extreme opposite end of the spectrum in terms of quality.
Yeah, and just to contrast that quickly, here's just an excerpt from Boy with the Striped Pajamas. What do you mean their own kind? Bruno asks. Gretel sighed and shook her head. With the other Jews, Bruno. Didn't you know that? That's why they have to be kept together. They can't mix with us. Jews, said Bruno, testing the word out. He quite liked the way it sounded. Jews, he repeated. All the people over on that side of the fence are Jews. Yes, that's right, said Gretel. Are we Jews? Asked Bruno. Gretel opened her mouth wide, as if she'd been slapped in the face. No, Bruno, she said. We most certainly are not. And he doesn't even know what they are. He says...
She doesn't even know what they are, though, which is even more surprising.
Exactly, yeah. So she says... So he's like, so what are we? And she goes... Gretel had to stop and think about it. We are, she repeated, but wasn't quite sure what the answer to this question really was. Well, we're not Jews, she said finally. I know we're not, said Bruno in frustration. I'm asking you, if we're not Jews, what are we instead? We're the opposite, said Gretel. So like at no point, she's 13 as well. At no point were they ever educated that they're Aryans. Yeah, like they don't even know that they're German or Aryan. It's bizarre.
Christian, yeah, anything. Yeah, it's bananas.
The going back to the the Zone of Interest film that really contrasts Boy in the Striped Pajamas. There's these really interesting articles that I read. I guess this isn't directly related to the film, but there's this writer named Thomas Harding, and he interviewed this woman named Bridget Haas, who was Rudolf Haas's daughter, for a couple of articles, one in the Washington Post, another in the Guardian. And she had lived, being the daughter of Rudolf Haas, she had lived in this house adjacent to the gates of Auschwitz. And she describes a lovely kind of idyllic childhood. I'm quoting from the article here. I remember we had fun, she said. We had a little swimming pool in the backyard. My mother had a beautiful garden house with flowers. She loved flowers. I love flowers too. They also had two pets, two tortoises called Jumbo and Dilla, and two big Dalmatians. Bridget says she knew the people who worked in the villa and garden were prisoners in the camp. Quote, they were always very happy. They called my mother the Angel of Auschwitz. Seeing my surprise, Bridget said, quote, my mom was just a nice person, period. So what was her father like, I asked. Quote, he was wonderful, absolutely wonderful person. I couldn't have wished for a better father.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, you could have.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's, the banality of evil has become a very cliched concept, but it's really evident in reading these articles and in seeing the Zone of Interest book I didn't read the book, but the Zone of Interest film.
One way that kind of like the thought that sparks into me is just like putting that into the context who the Nazis were, including like the worst of the worst guys like Hess, Stryker, Heydrich, Eichmann, all those, like the guys really designing the Holocaust. And like they did monstrous things, but they weren't physically monsters. Like they weren't comic book monsters with devil horns and things like that, which is to me much scarier, is that they actually were normal people with families, with children. And it's not strange that a daughter who was treated kindly by her father remembers him fondly, even if that father went out and did monstrous, bizarre, horrible, awful things to other people. That is, to me, something that this book could have done, right? It could have, and the movie does that as well, The Zone of Interest. It says, look, they're horrible, horrible people, but on a day-to-day basis, they are people. And that's interesting, that dichotomy of humanity, of being banal, of being everyday, boring, whatever, but also monstrous. But this book doesn't, they're not normal everyday people because they're far too stupid and ignorant of their surroundings to be normal people.
And what's weird is that it's written for like a young reader audience, like children, right? So if you read this with decent prior knowledge and context for the Holocaust, you can get through it a little bit easier because there's all these things that are like winked at or kind of slightly nodded towards, but aren't made explicit in it. But for like a young reader who had none of that, it would be, you wouldn't even be able to.
You wouldn't want it being your introduction to the Holocaust if you're, a 10-year-old boy, kind of just getting into World War II history.
Which apparently it widely is used in as an early introduction to the Holocaust. And I don't know how much also the author is, culpable for that sort of thing, because he's not designing education systems. He's not a teacher choosing which books are used to study something in a school. But it is strange that it's so widely used.
More kids are apparently reading it by one metric than Anne Frank in schools these days. It's sort of overtaken Anne Frank's diary as the Holocaust book.
Yeah, there's one study that keeps getting cited from somebody at the UCL, University in London, that was like almost 40% of teachers in the UK were using it to teach the Holocaust, it's scary. It's such a misrepresentative, is that a word, view of the Holocaust that, and we haven't even mentioned the fact that most of the supporting characters are against Nazis in the Holocaust. The mother is, the grandmother is. So if you take into account the number of people in the book who are actually Nazis and pro-Holocaust, there's only really 2. And then everyone else either has no idea what's going on or is openly and actively against it, which is obviously a misrepresentation of what went on in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. Where there was more than a few people who were, pro-regime.
There's even a strange scene where the boy meets Eva Braun, and she's like really beautiful and she's really very nice. She's extremely nice, and she kind of like implies like, hey, like there's some nice guys here. And I'm like, why is there this little celebration of Eva Braun randomly?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hitler apparently has no manners, and the Bruno is unimpressed with Hitler because he sits down at the head of the table without asking permission. He jumps into the car without waiting for his paramour. But Eva Braun is interested in the kids, giving them compliments, being nice, and it's like, yeah, why are you laundering Eva Braun's reputation?
That one just stood out to me as completely really unnecessary. Yeah. But that whole thing where it's just becomes and embedded in education systems in various places, this kind of speaks to broader issues rather than just the author doing a bad job of writing a book.
Like the whole world's going to shit? Is that what you mean here?
Well, no, there's just a lot of decisions along the way from whoever's planning curriculums and things like that, which is just a little bit sad, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like, can the author be held to account for the things the book is used for, or how it fits into broader things? Like there was that book the other year, American Dirt, Janine Cummins, which was basically, it was written by a white American lady about Central American migrants. And it was nominated for all sorts of awards, but then became a controversy because it was like, oh, you can't, she's stealing their voice, and, it shouldn't be a white lady, American lady writing this type of book, or there should be books by migrants. And it's like, well, it's not technically, that's true. It's also not entirely her fault that's, the broader trend in the conversation. But still, I don't know. With this guy, is it his fault that his book's being used to teach? I mean, they're teaching it, and he's laughing all the way to the bank with all the proceeds.
Yeah, he's just making money. For sure. He's doing great.
For sure.
So I mean, I personally would hold him to account for it, for writing, for not thinking, like, you want to tackle something like the Holocaust, you should be thinking through this stuff, which is pretty basic. Like, am I doing a fair representation of the German public? No. Am I doing a fair representation of the people who suffered in the concentration camps? No. And if you got no on both those questions, you should be rethinking your book before cashing your checks.
I don't think that's on the author, though. I think that's on the people recommending and reading this book. People can write whatever they want. If they're going to make bank on it, then I say that's fine. As most of the books you guys have read in this podcast.
Yeah. What's funny is this writer, John Boyne, has become completely ostracized from the literary world and everywhere except for France, but for entirely unrelated reasons.
I would love to hear about this.
Yeah.
I think we're all done with the book.
I also want to talk more about, we haven't talked about Shmuel yet as a character. And
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, the book doesn't talk about him as a character either, but I think it would be interesting to dive into that too. But however you had things planned, Chip.
No, that was like kind of the final thing I wanted to talk about was Shmuel as a character. I touched on a bit with regards to their friendship, but like Shmuel there's basically nothing to him as a character, and that's one of the more criminal things about the book. If you're telling a story about like whether if it's a story of friendship that the author says it is, both of these characters should be theoretically pretty well fleshed out. There should be some agency, and Shmuel is. He only and you actually kind of got to the, I think, what is the critical issue that causes this, but Shmuel can't be a fully fleshed out character because it would break Bruno's innocence, which is like the primary focus of the book, and because it's all leading towards the death of Bruno at the end. So Shmuel ends up just like sharing very little about himself. When he does speak, he'll so often just like stop talking for no reason in particular. And yeah, that's one thing where you're just reading, you're like, wow, like he's more of like a device than an actual character in the book.
Yeah, he's an object, not a subject. And he's also pretty stupid as well, right? Like he's not quite as dumb as Bruno, but as Chip, you already mentioned, like he doesn't understand the connection between not eating and getting skinny. He doesn't know what the Star of David is, and or why him and everyone else at the concentration camp are being forced to wear it. He, when
Jewish prisoner doesn't know what the Star of David is.
Yeah,
that's a little far fetched.
There's a part in the book where he like draws it out, and in the book it's really blunt because it's just literally just a Star of David. And then Bruno goes, "Oh, that's it! What a beautiful symbol! Here's another one that I like as well." And he draws a swastika.
The swastika, yeah.
But yeah, even when it's towards the end of the book where they're inside the camp, Bruno snuck inside under the reason that Shmuel's papa has gone missing, and so Bruno's going to come in and help him find his papa. But when the Nazis, the SS, start rounding them up, Shmuel's not even that worried. He's like, "Oh yeah, sometimes we get rounded up for marches." And Bruno's like, "What happens on the marches?" And Shmuel goes, "I don't know. The people never come back." It's like, and you're not scared? Like, first of all, you haven't worked out what's going on, but you're not scared. And it all comes back to that point that Chip made. The author says this book is about friendship. They're really shitty friends to each other. They're both responsible for the other's death directly. Like,
a few books have I read where it's all of this stuff is just so clear, like the lack of character depth, like the issues with the character's innocence, the lack of believability. Like it just hits you right away, and then it's never resolved in any fashion.
Like everything is just so improbable. Like we've outlined some of it, but he wouldn't be the only boy in the area, so he wouldn't have any reason to seek out friendship with some guy on the other side of the fence. Now, if you look at history, apparently all young boys were just murdered upon arriving in the camp. So there wouldn't be young boys just hanging out in the camps. You wouldn't be able to just hang out by the fence being unmonitored. As you've said, you couldn't just touch. So he just sort of pulls up the fence and crawls underneath it. There's no way that would exist in the camp. And there's no way that they, like, as murderous and devious as the Nazis were, they wouldn't just blow a horn and then herd a bunch of people into the gas chambers to be murdered. They're meticulous with records. They'd be checking for tattoos, numbers, registration. They're going to notice, and it's clear in the book that Bruno is overweight. A kid who's like kind of chunky is going to stand out. He's not, the idea that he's just going to get shoveled into the gas chamber and murdered accidentally is just like, it's so far-fetched. So it's just like a series of escalating events that completely strain any kind of credulity.
And to what end if this book is a fable? Yeah, fables fictionalize things, and there's parts that are unbelievable. But a well-written fable like Animal Farm works really well because, the animals don't actually speak to each other in real life. We all know that, and it's preposterous and unrealistic. But it's to make broader statements about the ideas of revolution and social order and change and how elites co-opt movements, right? And it does it extremely well, which is why that book is considered one of the best books ever written, even though it's on the face of it quite a simple story. But so to what end in this book? What it makes up all this ludicrously implausible events.
Yeah.
But in order to what? To teach us something about the Holocaust? No, because it doesn't do that. In order to teach us something about the value of in-depth friendship? No, because the book doesn't do that. So it's all done in order to whitewash this kid's ignorance and go, well, he was a victim too. This poor little Nazi boy who just wanted a friend. It's awful.
It's such a grotesque ending. I mean, it's like there's something that feels really exploitative about the ending.
Yeah.
And
well,
I wanted
as
to
an
watch the
horror.
film just to see. Yeah, I wanted to watch the film just to see how they portray it in cinema. But yeah,
Like,
I figured
it's like using like a gas chambers as like a set piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, he wrote it apparently over like 3 days.
I believe that.
And he says he rewrote it 10 times. I don't even know if that's rewriting something very much. I wonder if there was some other version of it where it was much more of an actual fable, and he like couldn't reconcile some of the things because he clearly wanted to position it in the real world at Auschwitz and things. Yeah. But in the end, this is what we got. Sucks dick.
It sucks dick. Speaking of sucking dick, should we talk about the author?
Now that's a segue.
I mean, he sucks dick as a metaphorically because he sucks, as opposed to the fact that he literally enjoys.
He literally is a gay man, so
yeah.
There's that too.
Yeah. What else to say about it? So he has a pretty bad track record of doing shitty research for his novels. There's one here that Jane will like. He wrote a book about someone traveling through time. It's a historical fiction where he visits all these different periods.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Something like that. And there's a recipe at one point for making dye in the book that's used by some tribe somewhere that's supposed to be in our real world. And the recipe was discovered by people to be a recipe from Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So clearly something he just Googled and just put it in.
I remember reading about that. I didn't remember or realize it was this author. That's funny.
So this guy tends to kind of step in it fairly often, I think.
He's mostly well known for being a TERF, though. Like that's where all of the scandal around this guy comes from. He was, I can't remember the name, I don't have it in front of me, but he was nominated for an LGBTQ plus book award, and then went out and said, "Yeah, I'd support the Harry Potter lady's stance. You know, I'm against trans people taking positions or opportunities that are for biological women." And the prize was like, oh, fucking hell. Like, what do we do now? So they there was a big backlash, a letter writing campaign. A lot of the other nominees said, I'm not going to appear on stage with this guy. So they just canceled the entire prize for that year. Subsequently, there was a university in in Ireland, where he was set to receive some sort of prestigious prize as well. And they also rescinded it. They're like, oh, we don't need this headache. Like, we don't want to deal with this. So apparently he's still getting awards in France, but in most of the Western world.
Why is he still popular in France?
They love Jerry Lewis and who's the Roman Polanski and all those types. Like they're not uptight about that kind of thing.
I like how TERFs are just lonely authors that live in like castles.
Yeah.
This is
well, just kidding, Rowling. Yeah, he's most certainly not kidding.
But yeah, that whole thing, the backlash over his comments and stuff, he attributes all the criticism that Boy in the Striped Pajamas receives to that. He says it's all part of like the woke mob coming after me. So now they're pretending my clearly perfect book about the Holocaust is also bad, which is
excuse me. It's not about the Holocaust. It's a fable about friendship.
I'm sorry.
The friends they made along the way.
To be fair, though, like when it came out, it was obviously super, super popular, and people loved it. And then it slowly became, when I guess historians or people that actually knew about it started reading it. I think it became less and less. So I can see that kind of being a dramatic shift in people's reception, like in his response to like how people like, you loved it before, what's different now, kind of thing. And it's like, oh, it's only because you hate me or something.
Yeah, but the turn, I think, was that basically the Auschwitz Museum specifically called the book out and said, this thing is a piece of shit.
There was some sort of like online Twitter feud between the author and the Auschwitz Memorial Museum's Twitter account. I haven't looked it up, but I mean, just that's such a funny concept.
Yeah.
They've called him out several times and just said, like, anyone who's interested in learning about the Holocaust, do not read this book. And I think that's where there was a big public turn.
I mean,
this book.
that would make sense. Like,
yeah, they're considered a bit of an authority on the issue.
All right. Anything else we wanted to cover when it comes to this book, or should we move on to our final segment?
Not a whole lot, short book.
Yeah.
One that we eventually had to cover, So I appreciate chatting about it with you guys.
Chip, you handled this with aplomb. It was a tough task, and you were the man who was up to the job. So hats off to you. I'll now pass the mic to the esteemed Dr. Bo Dashington, PhD, to take us through the Mein Kampf game, where we'll see.
Does we retired? Sorry.
I mean, if you're going to bring it out of retirement for any book, this is the book.
So season 1, the end of episode game was the classic, much loved bit. Is it worse than Hitler? Where we would compare the rating of the book on Goodreads to the rating of Mein Kampf. But we talked about retiring that because it
it's
was
in
getting
bad taste.
Because no, because it was getting a bit.
It's
too
in bad
easy.
Taste now.
Oh, yeah,
because everything was better than it. Everything's rated so high on Goodreads.
Yeah, it's not what you might think, which is that Mein Kampf is rated really low. It's not. It's got a pretty average rating, but it's that every other piece of shit we rated was surprisingly high. So, I mean, we can play if you want. Who wants to take a guess? Is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas better or worse than Hitler?
It would be such delicious irony, but I don't think it's going to be lower. Yeah, Chip.
No, it's definitely higher.
Can we rename it to Is It Worse Than the Fury?
Is it worse than the Fury?
Yeah, if we want to continue this. Yeah, I think it'll be better than Hitler. Still, a lot of people like the book. And as we've learned on Goodreads, they all score pretty well.
Yeah.
So should we say out with the game then?
Okay.
Yeah, send this one to the chambers. This one's done.
Ooh, I thought we'd make it through this episode without some off-color remarks, but apparently not.
Yeah, so The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is rated 4.16, which is almost a full point above Mein Kampf.
Oh, come on.
I mean, that's where it probably should be.
Don't sound too disappointed there. Right?
What I think is the problem is I think we need a better metric. We need something that's a bit more middle of the road than Mein Kampf is. Because all of these books are, as I've already said, they're all rated surprisingly high.
What about Gaddafi's Green Book that Chip Wilson's reading?
Better or worse than Gaddafi?
I don't want to spoil it for myself, just in case we cover it.
Yeah.
I think we need a different site.
Maybe that's a good idea. You know what? I'll do some research.
A more white power leaning book review site that has a higher rating for Mein Kampf. Is that what you're suggesting?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I was going the opposite direction. What a site which actually has bad reviews for bad books and not just giving everything a 4-star.
Could do that.
That's
too.
our site. Speaking of which, we have uploaded all the old reviews that we did from like 2012 to the early 2020s.
Yeah,
and just fixing them up right now.
And it's
awesome.
It blows my mind. I didn't realize. So there are over 80 old reviews from the old website. This is on our website, posbookclub.com. If you're on the homepage, scroll down to the bottom and click, I think it says more reviews or something like that. And you'll see the entire archive of, as I said, over 80 reviews of shitty books that have been done over the years by the Piece of Shit Book Club Executive Committee represented here, but also many former contributors over the years. So it's
disgraced former members.
Disgraced former members. Yeah, it's quite a pile of shit.
I highly recommend our viewers check out 1000 Famous Horses, Fact and Fictional Throughout the Ages, Not Race Horses and Not Show Jumping Horses, reviewed by Dr. Bo Dashington, which is a fantastic review and book.
That was easily the most fun book that I've read for the Piece of Shit Book Club. That wasn't. I don't even consider it a piece of shit. It's a list of literally just a list of 1,000 horses. But it is, man, it's a wild ride. Pun very much intended.
There's a lot of fun stuff there. We have there's some North Korean propaganda. What I've found actually is, as we're looking for books to discuss on the podcast now, there's a ton of, notoriously bad books that we've already covered in the past. So it makes it kind of tough for us to find something sometimes. Because you look up, I'm like, you look at the Celestine prophecy, let's say, and it's like, no, we already covered that. 10 years ago.
Is there a coherent theme for season 2? Like, what's the thesis of this season?
No.
Okay. Did we have one for season 1?
Just as things come.
We didn't have season 1 was just like, let's figure out how to do a podcast, and let's maybe get some decent audio gear and some microphones and shit like that.
That's
season
true.
2, I thought maybe there'd be an overarching concept that we're aiming for, but no, I guess not.
We
It's
take it
okay.
as it comes, like the semen
Great.
retention book.
All right. Well, thanks again to Chip Wilson for leading us through this fascinating discussion today. I really enjoyed it. Jane Lynch, thank you for your contributions. Dr. Bo Dashington, thank you. All members at home listening, thank you so much for showing up every meeting. I encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, drop us a message. Head over to posbookclub.com. You can visit our subreddit, Our Piece of Shit Book Club. We are on YouTube, kind of. We will be soon at POS Book Club. And send us an email. We love to get your emails at posbookclub@gmail.com. Until next time, stay sexy. I love each and every one of you. See you next meeting. Good night.